So Professor Sahai and Mr. Shivanshu Mehta of MCX will now announce the winners of the MCX Award for Excellence in Research on Gold, paper presentation which was done last year.
So while there is some sort of awareness about the award that has been jointly institutionalized by the IGPC and MCX, with your permission, sir, I just wanted to set the context for as we would all agree that gold is an absolutely imperative part of India's socio-economic fabric, and it's incumbent upon us as an exchange also, just like the IGPC, to create further awareness about it as an asset class and to understand the dynamics of the consumer behavior and the entire ecosystem at each level continuously, so that as a policy think tank which the IGPC is spearheading as a role, also gets that input of fresh understanding continuously. And we as a leading platform would always want the ecosystem as such to be further enriched as we go along, so that asset classes and products can be created around that understanding. So, would you like to announce? Please go ahead. After you, there are two, so maybe.
So from the previous year, there were two presentations that we particularly liked. The first one is by Monami Dasgupta and Rakshit Pomnathpur from Dwara Research, Savings in Gold by Low-Income Households in Rural India, an Empirical Study. So that's the first prize, and both will share the first prize. The second prize goes to Niharika Sopti of University of Delhi, and that is on intraday market quality around macroeconomic news evidence from the Indian gold market. So the combined cash prizes are 2.5 lakhs, courtesy of MCX. Thank you very much, Shivanshu, again. And we are very happy to announce these two prizes for the two papers.
We are also a country that worships gold. So wouldn't it be exciting to understand India's affinity with gold? Enlightening us on this topic today is Professor Satish Deodhar. He is the Professor for Economics at IIM Ahmedabad, a PhD from Ohio State. His interests in the subject are well captured in his book Economic Sutra. Today, the professor will present his ideas and perspective on gold through his paper, Gold is Old, Noble Metal in Indian Economy Through Ages. Over to you, sir.
Okay, can everybody hear me? I suppose, can you just raise hands so that I know you are able to hear? Okay, great, wonderful. All right, let me just share my PPT first and then I'll get going. Okay, yeah. So thanks for giving me this opportunity. What I'm going to do is the following. This is the synopsis of my presentation. I'll talk about why I was motivated to write this paper on the history. It's not, well, half of the presentation is on history, but I'm also trying to link it to the current context, right? So I'll talk about sacredness of gold in India. Where does it originate? What about the ancient gold jewelry? Production and supply of gold in ancient India, minting of gold coins in ancient India, and how over time there has been large stock but low production. And that has led to the gold, this gold hysteresis has led to how do you link this to savings in current context? How can one recycle the idle gold? How do you channel into financial markets? And probably I'm going to end up with IGPC can take this up, prospect for the largest gold museum in India. So that's the idea I'll give with. All right, so let me come to the first one, motivation. This was last Diwali, Diwali of 2021, and Royal Mint of UK sells Lakshmi gold bars for more than 1,000 pounds a piece. I think this will be, I think 20 gram, gold bar. Now, why I was taken aback. I said, why all of a sudden this is Royal Mint of UK doing this? That means probably Indian. If Sunak can become finance minister of UK, why not gold bar of Lakshmi in UK also, right? So Indians are now everywhere. I'm sure I see in the audience, I see Vamanhari Pete representatives also. I'm sure they have their gold Lakshmi bars also. But this drew my attention because this was happening in London, Royal Mint of UK, right? So it looks like, the Gold Council mentioned that there is close to 23,500 tons of stock of gold in India, and about 4,000 tons held by the temples themselves. And official reserves are around 745 tons, give and take a few tons as time changes. It certainly has an impact on the economy, because currently there is no domestic production, no surprise there. By, I think, 1955, almost 1,000 tons of gold was siphoned off by the UK company into England. And now we have hardly anything, maybe a few tons, 1 or 2 tons being produced every year. And we are importing, therefore, 9% of the value of our imports, we are importing gold. It's about 800 tons per month, per annum, right? So certainly there is something to do with this, the culture, the history has something to do with the current issue as well. So why this fascination? So one must look at the history, geography, science, economics, and culture of gold. And as someone, as a philosopher has said, science without history is like man without memory. So we better know and learn from the history also, so that we can make better judgment, right? And for a country of continental proportions, which has a history of more than 5,000 years, surely we must have learned something from it. And therefore, I thought I should look back. And it's important that channeling the fascination to the financial markets is important, because imports are 9%, right, of the total value of imports. So let me look at the sacredness of gold. If you look at Hiranyagarbha Sukta in Rigveda, it talks about a golden seed or golden womb. Now, if you look at the Western cultures and Western religions, God existed and God created everything in 7 days. But for the Indian culture, in the Indian civilization, there is no beginning, no end, Anadi and Ananta. But there was a golden womb or golden seed from which even God has been created. So there was no God to start with. God got created out of the golden womb. So this gold has therefore very precious importance for Indian cultures, right? In fact, Sri Sukta, another Sukta in Rigveda, describes Lakshmi as goddess of prosperity and beauty, right? And she, of course, shines with golden hue and garlands. So adoration of Lakshmi is just not there in Hinduism, it's there in Buddhist and Jain literature as well. Lakshmi appears in Buddhist and Jain temples. Lakshmi drives away Kalakini, the goddess of misfortune, and Jataka stories, which depict the life prior to 600 BCE. So they talk about Lakshmi, and which is associated with gold. So images of Lakshmi and gold started appearing from around 3rd century BCE. And most of the jewelers would know, when you make this gold bar of Lakshmi, she has 4 hands. 4 hands represent the 4 Purusharthas, Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. One is Artha, of course. And the sculpture generally show Varada Mudra, right? That's palm, opening palm, from which gold kinds of, flowing off, right? That's the Varada Mudra for you. So this is the Varada Mudra, from the open palm, the gold coins are falling off. And that's the typical image of golden Lakshmi. By the way, this is the picture of the UK's Royal Gold Mint, which came out with the bar, right? So, and in India, we have Ashtalakshmis actually. And these Ashtalakshmis are grain, livestock, many other things, and of course, money and gold, right? So, and we have a special Lakshmi Pujan day on Diwali festival. So no wonder gold is associated with Lakshmi. Sacredness is very much there. Let me talk about ancient gold jewelry. No guesses who this person is. Hardly any gold or jewelry or any gold, even a ring probably on his hand. Of course, the hand is missing. And look at the comparison this to this. Jewelry is everywhere. Even the elephant has jewelry, right? So this is the difference. This is on the right, you have king of Greek god Zeus, has no gold jewelry. And Indra on the right-hand side, on the left-hand side, has golden headgear, bracelets, necklaces, waistbands, anklets. Even the elephant has jewelry. So you can bring out from ancient times, fascination for gold is very much there because of the sacredness associated in the sacred texts themselves. Rigveda talks about gifting gold, and all kinds of descriptions of different jewelry items are there, whether it's necklace, headgear, breastplates, right? There are many others, Gruhya Sutras, Vajasani Samhita, Atharva Veda, Shatabada Brahmana, you name it, everywhere you find mention of gold and gold jewelry. In fact, even in Kautilya's Arthashastra, production of gold is managed by superintendent of gold, who is called Suvarnadaksha, and the royal goldsmith is called Suvarnika. Right? You look at the literary espousals. Bhartrihari's Niti Shataka, he talks about Sarve Gunaha Kanchanam Ashrayante, that is, all virtues of a person take shelter in gold. If you look at Atharva Veda, there's a mention that one who dies of old age becomes what he wears. If it is gold, one will get the splendor, strength, and brilliance of gold. So no doubt, whether it's culture, whether it's religious texts, the importance of gold cannot be wished away. What about production and supply of gold? Was it just fascination? Was it just imagination? And certainly not. To match the imagination, we know that gold was very much produced and found in India. There are 4 kinds of gold sources that were there. The first was placer gold. Placer gold is basically gold deposits in riverbeds. And there are mentions in Rigveda that river Sindhu, that is Indus, and river Ganga, both had plenty of placer gold or the gold deposits, right? And there are even references to Manas Sarovar and the Thokyalug gold deposits in the Himalayas, right? So this is the Tibetan side. Then there is a Pipilika gold. Pipilika gold is extracted by panning the auriferous soil of the ant and termite hills. This mention you find in Mahabharata when Yudhishthira was offered powdered gold when he was anointed as king. This is called as a Pipilika gold. Buddhist treatise Anguttara Nikaya also refers to extraction of gold dust, which is the Pipilika gold from the termite hills. The third one was liquid dissolved gold. You find this mention in Kautilya's Arthashastra. Kautilya refers to natural liquid dissolved gold, which would be available in the mountain rocks and crevices. Certain mountains and rock crevices would have it, and he makes a mention of that. Right? Kalidas refers to Kanaka Rasa. He talks about basically liquid dissolved gold. And so also there is a Gandhavyuha Sutra treatise which refers to Hataka Prabhasa, which means Hataka Prabhasa means liquid gold. And the fourth one, of course, what we would all know is gold from the smelting ore. Shatabada Brahmana refers to obtaining gold by smelting the ore. Kautilya gives details of such extraction. He's called Suvarna Dhatav. Director of mines, he calls him Akara Daksha, and had to be an expert in smelting and metallurgy. And he gives assaying tests. He says the touchstone from Kalinga and Tapi area are the best for assaying of the gold. So there is a lot of history. This is not just imagination that we are talking about, but there's very much production of gold and conversion into jewelry. It was not just jewelry. Gold coins were also being minted. Again, Vedic literature talks about it. There is something called button gold or Hiranyapinda, which is unstamped gold coins. And then there were stamped gold coins also. They were called Nishka, Satamana, or Krishnala, depending on different denominations. Mint mastery was a profession back then. I'm talking about 4th century BCE, Mahavagga, the Buddhist scriptures. They give a story of a boy called Upali, and his parents are thinking what their son should do. This problem is very age old. What our kids should do, whether they should go for science, arts, commerce, engineering, this problem is very old. So Upali's parents are wondering whether he should become a monk, whether he should become a writer, or maybe a mint master. So mint mastery was a known profession by 4th century BCE, right? Kautilya refers to Lakshanadyaksha, which is a mint master, and Rupa Darshaka, which is a coin examiner, right? And there was heavy penalty for circulating counterfeits, and it was death penalty for depositing counterfeits into the treasury. And this was Kautilya for you. In Hathi Gumpha inscriptions, again in Odisha, Hathi Gumpha inscriptions talked about King Kharavela, and King Kharavela was here, I think, regrouped himself post Ashoka. He expanded his empire back again, right? You remember the Kalinga War, right? After Kalinga War, after Ashoka, Kharavela, gets back all his territories. King Kharavela was well trained in Rupa Sutra, and Rupa Sutra means nothing but minting of coins. So he was well known for that. And then there are treatises on coinage also. Buddhist monk Buddha Ghosha, who visited Sri Lanka, he wrote the treatise called Rupa Sutra. Then there are 4 types of coins that he mentions. One is called Chaturasra, which is rectangular, Parimandala, which is circular, Dirgha, which is elongated, and irregular, which is Chitra Vichitra. Right? Thakkar Feru in 1318, he wrote a treatise called Dravya Pariksha, right? And gold coins were known at that time as Sita Rami. Over time, what has happened is, since we have a millennial history, more than 5,000 years old history, over time, accumulation of gold was there. Large stocks were being created. However, stock of production, the flow of gold, flow of new production was coming down. And that we can see this through this slide here. In the 1st century, Pliny the Elder, he was the advisor to the Roman kings. He says he lamented imports not worth the gold Rome was sending to India. 16th century later, Martin Luther is saying the same thing. Martin Luther says he laments that trade with Indies is draining their money. You look at the Sangam text around 1st century AD, Sangam text from in Tamil Nadu, right? It quoted Yavana ships return with pepper and Muziris would resound with gold. Gold coins, of course, were minted by Guptas, Lakshmi engraved on it, and Ramatanka was minted by Vigraha Raja in 12th century, and gold mohur by Sher Shah Suri, right? Later in the British period, there was a big find. 8 loads of 20,000 Roman gold coins were found in South India, right? As a huge cache was found. So naturally, over the millennia, stock of gold was going up. But what about production? Production was dwindling. We did not have the placer gold in the alluvial plains of Sindhu and Ganga was gone. The liquid gold was gone. Only thing what we are left with over time, over millennia, was the gold ore, which also today we hardly have anything, right? So relative scarcity of gold can be found out from these ratios. During Vedic period, and this is all recorded, I'm not making this up, I can give you the references. During the Vedic period, 1 silver was equal to 1 gold. Availability of relatively plenty of both of them, and this was the ratio. By Chandragupta Maurya's time, it became 2 silver to 1 gold, right? And therefore, Chanakya never talks about gold coins. He says gold is too expensive to bring in as a medium of exchange. So he moves on to silver. During the Gupta period, of course, 6 silver became 1 gold. And today, of course, it is 70 silver coins to a 1 gold coin of equal weight, right? So certainly, gold has become too expensive over time because stock is increasing, but production is not. And that's the problem, right? Therefore, gold is no more a medium of exchange. Kautilya himself gave it up long back. And during the Sher Shah Suri's time, now instead of a gold mohur, he's finally started making silver rupiah, right? So we know Sher Shah Suri's silver rupiah, which became famous in the 16th century, right? So we moved from gold to silver. No wonder Mauritius to Maldives, Seychelles to Sri Lanka, India to Indonesia, Nepal and Pakistan both have rupee in their currency, right? That's mentioned. All right, so let's talk about gold hysteresis. This is the past that we are bestowed with. What this has to do with the savings, right? So religious sacredness, fondness for jewelry, store of value, because it's a noble metal, doesn't corrode, right? We started holding lots of gold. Is this a store of value or a medium of exchange? If you look at the price elasticity of demand for gold, short-run elasticity is 1.2 and long-run elasticity is 0.4, price elasticity of demand. So speaking like an economist, if consumer durables, short-run price elasticity is much higher than the long-run price elasticity. And that is what clearly comes out here. Gold is a consumer durable. It's not a consumable, and therefore this short-run elasticity is extremely high. But what this cost, the obsession has come as a cost. As I said in the beginning, the stock is very high. Value is 1.49 trillion, but gold imports are of 2.5 trillion a year, almost 9% of our import value, right? This is what I talked about right in the beginning. And industrial, by the way, use is also rising in electronics, photocell panels, satellites, everywhere you need now gold. In fact, 0.02 or even less, some amount of gold is there in each of our cell phones also. right? So this demand is also going up. So the gold stocks for India, they are holding, as if you put in terms of economics, it is holding, it is not savings. India's saving rate is about 30% of GDP. Out of that, around 18% is household savings, right? And financial savings are even less, 7%. 11% of the household saving is in the form of gold. Naturally, this is a hedge against inflation, store of value, right? If you look at the last 40 years, the annual return on gold has been about 9.6%, and inflation rate is about 6%. Naturally, one would like to hold gold to hedge against inflation, right? Importantly, buying gold is a leakage from the circular flow. The standard economics argument, if you look at GDP as a circular flow, consumers are buying, firms are producing. If people out of their income buy gold by imports is a leakage from the circular flow. That means you are not spending on goods and services produced domestically. So it's a leakage from the circular flow. And it's a double whammy, because even if you purchase gold, you are not, that means, putting your saving into financial assets. If you don't put it in financial asset, that means firms cannot borrow your money, excess money, right? So it becomes a holding. So it's a double whammy for us, that gold becomes holding, not savings. So therefore, how should we recycle the idle gold stocks? In 2015-16 itself, gold monetization scheme was introduced, but didn't become much successful. I understand by 2018, only 11 tons of gold was collected. If we want gold monetization scheme to succeed, right, what could be done? Now, you need to incentivize banks and consumers. If we make gold deposits to count for cash reserve requirement, probably banks will be incentivized. Very few banks currently are participating. If you allow, out of, let's say, between 5 to 6% of CRR, let's say, if you allow not just cash, but you can keep gold also against your CRR, cash reserve requirement, probably there'll be more incentive for banks to participate in gold monetization scheme. The idle gold stocks from households can be put in gold monetization scheme. Let's say, a typical household has, let's say, 10 items of jewelry. Maybe 1 or 2 are used every day. It's a wedding ring and maybe a few other 1 or 2 things. Maybe a few more are used on festive occasions and displayed, right? Lakshmi Pujan or Gudi Padwa or what you have it, right? But another 5 could be just held idle. That could be placed in gold monetization scheme, but you need to give incentive to banks as well, right? So if you put as a part of CRR, probably more banks will come forward, right? World Gold Council says 60% of gold purchases in India are in rural India. I was hearing earlier conversation, maybe this may not be the final word, maybe more of buying from urban centers, but you need smaller deposits of gold also for GMS. If the typical success of Jan Dhan accounts, even if you have zero balance, open an account, that was started by Prime Minister, maybe something similar can be done for gold deposits as well. To start with, have a zero balance, but you may build up your balance over time for the gold monetization scheme, right? And as somebody mentioned earlier, we can co-opt jewelers also for creating GMS accounts, because they need gold for turning into jewelry, right? Access gold loan network. Gold loan market is more than 3,000 crores. More popular probably in South and maybe little in West. And but there is a network available already of banks giving gold loans. So therefore, there is a two-way synergy. Gold loans to GMS and GMS account holds to gold loans, right? So let's say I take gold loan, as somebody was saying earlier, when gold loan is taken, many times it is sold eventually. Maybe instead GMS account can be created. Or if there are GMS accounts and there is a need for cash, gold loans can be created out of GMS. So this networking can be expanded for both GMS and gold loans, and that might be useful. And of course, there could be behavioral nudges. 2.5% interest is paid on gold deposits, right? Savings on locker charges is given up. That's also some incentive. And of course, safety is another thing. There is no income tax on interest earned on gold monetization scheme, no wealth tax, no capital gains on appreciation, right? So I think these things need to be, consumer needs to be made more aware of these issues. Banks also need to be given more incentive. Probably GMS scheme might become a success. And if we have faith in current money, money has gone through a lot of changes. It was gold first, then became silver, then nickel, then paper. Today we have online money, right? But we all have faith in the monetary system. When I put my money into bank account, I know that bank doesn't have all the money in the vaults, right? But I still believe in it because I have faith in the banking system. Similarly, if you have faith in the gilt edge deposits, GMS, consumer may start disholding. The gold could be in the form of paper gold with banks, which bank can use, right? And that can be channeled into financial markets. The moment GMS network and gold loan deposits get connected, substantive gold deposits are generated and banks could give gold inventory and working capital needs of the jewelers. What this would mean is probably we are going to stop importing much more gold. It can, out of 10 jewelry items, if 5 are completely idle, they can come into the financial market, can be given as a working capital loan for the jewelers, and it just might work. Of course, some others were speaking in the morning. You need to promote other instruments also, right? ETF, it is 100% backed by gold. If banks have this additional gold from the consumers, which is never being used, ETF and other international bullion exchange can work better if actual gold is available to back it, right? Of course, one of the reasons why gold is being held is, as we talked about earlier, is inflation, right? Keeping inflation low is also one of the objectives of Reserve Bank of India, right? If inflation is very low, consumers are less likely to hold on to or hoard gold, and they may participate into GMS much more, right? All these things could lead to more recycling and channeling of gold, right? So that's the basic idea I wanted to connect through. And I'll leave you with a thought. There could be an Indian gold museum. Museo del Oro in Bogota, Colombia is the world's claimed to be the world's largest gold museum. The pre-Columbian, quote unquote, Indian gold artifacts are on display there. It's there for the last 8 decades. In the Indian context, if GMS is adopted by household trusts, temples, and they generate inventory of all that they have, 24,000 tons of stock of gold, jewelry, coins, artifacts, statues, sculptures, and sacred and scientific texts, voluminous generic items could go into GMS bank accounts or gilt edge deposits, and priceless objects can be displayed in the state-of-the-art gold museum. I'm sure visitors will be happy to pay, foreigners would like to visit, and it could be one of the largest gold museums in the world. A practical extension of GMS, maybe IGPC can take such an initiative as well, but this is just as a postscript. My focus was more on why there is so much fancy for gold, what is the context in which we look at this, and how it could be monetized or brought into the financial system. I think I'll stop here. If there are any questions or any discussion, I'll be happy to interact with you all. Yeah, over to Satish or Mini. Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir.
So Satish,
Yeah.
like the idea of a museum, where would you where would you locate this, and what would be the pitch for what would be the contents of this, and who would be the audience that might actually want to fund this museum, and who would be, I can imagine people coming to it and seeing stuff in there.
Right.
Who would be the audience that might want to fund it because it makes sense for them?
Good question. That's why I said this is a postscript. I wanted to leave the idea with the IGPC, but no, I think tourism could be a big attraction. I mean, in different cities, when you visit, right, you go to a museum many times. If the museum becomes very popular, there could be a revenue model, I suppose, that people will come to watch, pay a price for this and come. And if GMS scheme is becoming successful, I'm sure, I mean, from the supply side.
That's a big if. Six
Yeah.
years and nothing has happened.
I
Princely talking
know,
of
yeah,
22 tons.
yeah. So I think, so let's say gold becomes part of CRR, that's one possibility, right? And I think the fact that 2.4% interest is there, safety is there, no any kind of income tax, wealth tax, and capital gains tax, or so many other things I think they have not been percolated. The idea has not percolated. And like Jandan Yojana, if there could be a possibility of very low 1 gram, but still you can open an account, right? These days with internet being used, it's quite possible. So I've made a few suggestions from the supply side so that stock might go up and the recycle can happen. In the process of recycling, I'm saying that I'm sure whether it's Padmanabha temple or whether it's Sai Baba temple, I'm sure extremely beautiful artifacts from supply side could come to light. And there could be a revenue model one can think of that it could be in Delhi, Mumbai, where the foreign visitors come, and even domestic visitors, our absolute numbers is very large population. So there could be a revenue model for this, I suppose. I mean, this is a nascent idea. I am just throwing it up.
I think that's it. We're done with the questions, I guess.
Okay.
Thank you.